I've got a separate loft where I wing my birds into. So all 20, well, I think it fit 30, but I'll put like 20, 22 in it.
Yes.
The second day after winging, I'll let them start coming outside. I'll put a piece of wood on a chair to let them start walking out, and then
There's a saying in the pigeon hobby that if you fly mixed families of birds, you'll get mixed results in the air. For example, some come in their roll earlier, and some fly different, and some kit differently, and then you get mixed results. What's your take on that?
I agree with that statement 100%. So if you get 5 different families and you breed the families to each other, obviously you don't know what to expect unless you breed one family from one guy the whole time, then you know more or less. But basically, if you mix families, you're gonna have to breed. It's gonna take you a few years to build your own family to know what works for the family that you've built, for instance. So yes, you will get, if you cross families, you will get a mixed result. But as more you breed and work with them and they become your own, then you should be fine.
Got it, got it. What's the worst piece of advice you ever got about rollers? What's the best piece of advice you've ever got about rollers? The best and the worst advice.
Okay, I'll start with the worst.
Yes.
Worst piece of advice. There's been some bad ones. So to pinpoint one is, I don't know, because somebody's bad advice will, I don't know. Actually, I don't want to answer this one. It's because
it's going to be controversial.
No, not just that, because for something that would have been bad advice for me would be good advice for another guy.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
But then, like, no, don't you think that there are things that make sense, like generally, right? In any field. Like if somebody says, if you add that 2 there, then we're going to get the sum. Like it's just you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean.
While you're talking about yes, there's advice that could work for people in Pretoria. The weather is different that side, right? But it won't work as effectively this side. But there's just general common nonsense. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but how do you distinguish what is nonsense and what is not? You must, unless you do it for yourself. The only way you'll know if it's bad advice is if you tested it. If you know, okay, that didn't work, so it was bad advice, that didn't for me. But the best advice, and I would give it to anyone, is don't fly your birds every day. Well, fly your birds, spend time with your birds, and go stand under other people's birds, kids. Go look at other people's, because you can get what they call loft blindness, where you think your birds are amazing until you go to on Tommy or wherever, and then you're like, oh,
nice.
Snap. Or people that only fly competition, they're under their own birds, and then they go to competition, they don't get any results. So they loft blind. Go visit people. Go see how their birds are flying. Compare. See, okay, yes, I've got a chance. You know, that's good advice. I would give. Well, advice I got is spend as much time with the birds. If you fly them, look at them. Don't take tea breaks, whatever. See what's happening with your birds, and then go look at other people's birds. That's the best advice I've ever got.
Got it. And what advice would you give people who are flying competition, and what advice would you give for people who are just flying, just mainly for the fun of it, just backyard flying?
Well, depends on. So somebody does not fly competition. Why does he not fly? First of all, does he feel like his bird's not good enough? So if you just fly for the love of it, then you do you. You know what I mean? Obviously, I can't give too much on guys who fly competition religiously, because I'm still now in the start of things. But yeah, just train, and if you do it for the love of it and no competitions, then that's also good. You just do what you feel is then right. But yet again, visit other people, see what's happening.
Got it. People normally say that the quality of birds we have now is not as good as the one that guys had from 2000 to 2009. What's your take on that? Don't you think the birds have improved? Do you think they have improved, or we've just underperforming from?
Okay, so I think that birds from 2000 to 2009.
Yes.
If you had those birds still breeding the same family currently, or you got birds from whatever. Yes, I remember my dad also back in the he flew very good birds. But it all just depends on. Yeah, I don't know. They good and bad. Just like it was back into the early 2000s. You know what I mean? There was good ones, bad ones, and yet again, birds. Some families might not be as good now because of maybe bad advice or people that don't help each other out, and then that whoever breeds those birds brings the quality a bit down because they're not sure. Is it not what they're doing, but well. I think the flying is also different. You know what I mean? But what they were looking for back then and now, I don't say it's less. The quality decreased or increased. I just think it got better, but not in all aspects. You know, some people, yeah.
Okay. Earlier on, off camera, you said that there will be a time where I take your birds, and then after taking your birds, and then I fly them where I live or well on, and then they don't give me the same results that you have with your same birds. Okay, there's a question here that says that a lot of people where I come from have your bloodline. What would you advise them to do just so that they get the same results that they gave before they bought them from you? From feeding, medication, and how many times to fly them in a day? How would you advise them?
Okay, so yeah, that comes down to that. If I give you birds, babies, or stock birds. Okay, no. If I give you birds to fly, okay, then at least I must guide you or try to tell you how I do it at my place, how I feed, how I do it more or less. Then you might get the same result. But if I give you birds and leave it to your own devices, they might not perform the same because you don't train the same as me or whatever. But if you do take those birds that you fly them, but they're not more or less like you wanted them, whatever. But you breed them. Those babies you breed is your birds. They'll fit to your schedule, and they might perform like you want.
Oh, got it. People normally. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut that one. Is it true that when you feed your flying birds high protein feed, they become too strong in the air and can fly for 3 hours minimum in the air, or go too high to be unjudgeable because of the high protein food that you give them?
Yes, I do think that. So obviously depends on the type of food. So obviously a lot of mealies and their full amount or whatever will make the birds too strong to fly or whatever. But I think it comes down to the amount of food that you give them. So if you give them the flying mix, this amount. You can also overfeed the flying mix, and they will still stay hours into the sky. It's all about the amount. The amount you give your birds determines how long they fly. Personally, I mean that's what I've figured out for myself.
Okay. After flying them, do you feed them straight up after they just landed, or do you close them up in the cage so that they catch their breath maybe for 2 to 3 minutes?
Oh, yeah, like I told you off camera, it's all about discipline. So if you let your birds come down and let them walk around the bird, and then you try to get them into the loft, they'll do what they want. You know what I mean? But as soon as they come down, if there's few birds still flying, I'll give them a minute to 2 minutes. Then I'll call them to go in. So that bird understands. I come sit and I go into the loft, and then I feed. You know what I mean? So they know when they come sit, they go in, they'll get something to eat. So that's what I do. And I also determine that if out of the 20, only 15 go in when they should go in, I'll feed for 15 birds. The 5 that is outside, they will eat tomorrow again, because then they'll learn to go in when you want them to go in.
Got it.
You treat your birds like dogs.
Do you believe that your birds will lead you to the feed that they perform well on? from how they feed. Probably they'll eat sorghum first, and then maybe they'll finish sorghum, and then they go to other grains and stuff like that. And then you decided to just give them sorghum because that's what they like. Or do you do it some other way?
I feel like the pigeons do have a preference of what they like, but a kid bird, because remember, you keep your kid birds hungry, not starving.
Ooh.
A hungry bird will eat whatever you put in front of him. He'll eat it. So you'll see with your stock birds when you give breeding, or what do you call it, the roller mix, when they had enough to eat the previous day, then the next day they're still not too hungry, then they'll get nitpicky and say, I'll eat that, and I'll eat that, and most of the time you say they'll leave more mealies, then they'll leave peas or whatever, but kid birds must finish their food, and then I do it, I'll stand and watch my birds as they eat. The second bird that drinks water, I remove the food.
Whew. Wow.
Because then,
okay.
Yeah, that's enough. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's
Wait, is there a reason for
controversial.
that?
Yeah, because by the second bird, so also something I grew up with. You can also talk about as well. So by the time the second bird drinks water, it means that everybody by that time should have eaten enough food for them and not overeat.
Oh.
But it also makes your birds quite active. So I once on a essay group, we were looking at birds and people asked questions. I said, no, what I do is I do what I just explained to you. And Tommy wrote quickly after, she said, no, you can't do that with essay distance roller, so it won't work because it will be too active.
Oh, shucks. Okay, so with feeding, do you think it's different from Birmingham's and SA distance?
I would think so, yeah, most for sure.
Because, okay, SA distance, they are longer. Where else? Okay.
But you also want them to fly higher and longer. So you'll feed them more, a bit more protein. You know what I mean?
Oh, shucks.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right. I've heard people say that during the molt, you should feed birds extra feed from their usual quantity. You normally feed them because it affects the growth of the new feathers if they don't get extra feed.
Okay, so what I do, from a tip, if birds are in the molt, I still give them the same amount of food, but I supplement with cod liver oil, Ouijam oil, and what's that yellow powder? Swal. What do you call it in English? Sulfur.
Oh.
Okay, so that puts the oil, the necessary oils that they need is on the food, and so it helps them in the molt. And I'll let you handle my birds, and then you can feel they lack a salt. They're still molting, but some of them are off the mold, and that little supplement you give them just helps the feather quality amazingly.
Oh.
It's still the same amount, but I'll just put cod liver, Ouijam, and salt. I think it's called sulfur. Yeah.
Okay, this next question comes from probably the subscribers that live in colder environments or colder climates. I don't know if you know how to answer it, but let's give it a shoot. I've heard people who live in hot areas say that they don't feed their birds corn. And corn you can feed your birds if you live in a cold environment because the birds do need it to carry extra fat to stay warm. But if you live in an area where it doesn't get freezing temperatures, they wouldn't recommend feeding corn because it takes long to trim the fat off the birds.
Okay, so also, yet again, what I think, or my opinion, is it's not necessarily about the grain you're giving them, and it's about the amount. So you can still feed your flying birds flying mix, but if in a colder climate, obviously they need a bit more body fat, so you'll feed them a little bit more than what I feed in hot temperature. You know what I mean?
Oh, got it.
All it's quantity in and how much you feed them.
Oh, I remembered my question. Sorry to cut you off. Can I just ask before I forget? We fed our birds mealies, hard mealie. It's hard mealie, ne?
Yeah.
Hard mealie. Mm-hmm. So they started developing
the difference between crushed mealie and solid mealie.
The difference.
Yeah. Would you advise people? What would be your advice for people who fly and feed their birds crushed mealie? Would you recommend that?
Solid mealies.
Solid mealie.
Yeah, so they break it down themselves because as soon as you crush mealies,
yes.
if you ever watch people when they make alcohol,
yes.
it releases more starch.
Oh. Oh, got it.
So I think they get way more starch into it when it's crushed. It might sound weird to you, but yeah,
Oh.
makes it So but no, so solid mealies.
Solid meal.
Solid. Yeah, crushed mealies is for chickens. Joking.
Okay, cool.
No, I
Because you know where this question comes from. Okay, where we come from in the township, with
Obviously.
economic blah blah blah, and a lot of people love birds and stuff. So if you are under the budget and stuff like that, you'd go for crushed meal
for sure.
and stuff, and then they start developing what's this canker, and then they start getting those things. Because I've heard people say that if you feed crushed meal, they end up having canker because those crushed mealy, they end up cutting the ends and stuff.
You know what? That's actually a good question to ask from Tommy. I think he's the one, because I can't see how they can give you bird canker unless, because it's a broken up thing. It gets a what's your word? Like concentrated, so the powder concentrates. So is it canker or is it just the unpack? What's the word? Is it just all the mealy dust, whatever you call it, pieces that are just concentrated at one point? Have you ever tried to like scratch it off to see?
Yes, I have.
Does it bleed?
Yes, it bleeds.
I think that's a question from Tommy.
Okay,
he understands those things.
Because just to stretch it a little bit, now his question, because to me it doesn't make sense. Because I think crushed mealy you can feed them when you are out of budget. Because of the grit that we feed, it also has sharp ends to it. Yeah. So the same argument of saying that we're feeding crushed meal is gonna give them stuff like that.
That's a difficult thing. I'm not sure. But one thing I can say, if I take my feeding tin, full of whole mealies, and I take my the same amount of mealies and I crush it, it will be probably half in the same tin. So I think crushed mealies also is more quantity, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
As you feed it. So, but I don't know. This is something I can't even.
Got it.
Yeah, but just saying that, like, I know you might not answer this since you referred Tommy. The strange thing was that it was only the younger birds that had the canker.
Canker, yeah.
They must have they must have picked it up somewhere. If a bird gets canker, it's not even a female in there. If I can't see how it can be from cuts. It must be from it got infected with canker. It must have picked it up. So either way the food you get comes from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Canker was already there. You know what I mean? That's why if I have a bird with canker, I remove it immediately because they can cross contaminate each other. They fight with each other or whatever. So
you're saying it's possible that the
virus or the
and then they spread it amongst themselves.
For sure. So it either picked it up by a wild bird that tried to eat the mealy or something that was too big.
Wild birds.
And then your bird comes around and picks it up, and then it infects itself, and then they can infect each other by drinking water and all. Yeah, so wild birds.
Oh yes.
No, Maramanja, why is it the younger ones appear?
Younger birds doesn't have the immune system like old birds.
Exactly, because remember, young
they're still developing.
And what's this? Wild birds also come visit, and then they mix with the birds, and then they get it from those wild birds. So it might be that, probably not even crushed mealy, but those wild birds.
Yeah,
so I think he's right.
You know what confused me? It makes sense. And now that you explained the immune system, what was confusing the most for me was, why is it only the
young ones?
Yeah, the younger birds.
Probably just
the immune system is still developing.
Yeah, no, it's not all the way there yet.
Got it. If you're flying a kit of youngsters reaches 5 months without them rolling properly and have sloppy rolls, do you carry on with training them or get rid of them?
A year. I give my babies a full year to see what they do. If they
reach that,
if they do reach it, and by a year if they're still sloppy and not developed, then they're not even good for the next guy. Then unfortunately, kit loft next to the road.
Have you had a situation whereby like you gave a bird like you say a year, and then maybe the 11th month or late, then they start performing, whereas they were bad throughout the year?
Yes, I think so. So if they were bad as youngsters, you know what I mean? But if it is 18 months, 20 months, and still the bird is sloppy, then it's never going to come right. There's no way I would like to see or go to someone that said that bird only started rolling in 2 years and now it's a champion. No. If it made, and another thing that birds can get when they're developing themselves, you fly them and they're starting to develop and they learn bad tendencies. It might keep it, it might lose it. It's a game that we don't understand fully. You know, we don't understand it completely.
Got it. Okay. There are people that swear on hens that look like cocks. Or you want a bird that looks like a hen to look like a hen. Or a cock that looks like a cock to look like a cock.
That's what it should be. A hen should look like a hen and a cock should look like a cock.
So you wouldn't use birds that, probably a cock that looks like a hen. You wouldn't use that.
No, never a cock that looks like a hen. A hen that looks like a cock might still be useful in type. Okay, so if you have a little bit of a cock that's too small, or not saying it looks like a hen, it's a little bit, you can help it with a little bit of a bigger hen, you know what I mean?
Got it.
Yeah, but I won't, a cock must look like a cock, a hen must look like a hen. That's what I feel like.
Got it. How do you home your young birds?
Yeah, it's a process. For me, because it's always nerve-wracking, first of all. So I've got a separate loft where I wing my birds into. So all 20, well I think it's 30, but I'll put like 20, 22 in it.
Yes.
The second day after winging, I'll let them start coming outside. I'll put a piece of wood on a chair to let them start walking out. And then from there they must fly onto the grass. So it's all a process, timeline, whatever.
Oh.
Then I'll start running them on the garden, which means is if they come out the loft here, I'll walk a little bit further, put feet on the ground, and then walk back. So eventually you get your youngsters to fly. So you walk each here, you walk here, you fly. Now you're sort of turning into kit. So they fly together, land, they eat. You do it a few times, and just one day, as they fly to you, you just clap your hands and let them go. And as soon as you do that with babies that's never flown before,
yes,
you scrack them, immediately start calling them back. Don't just let them go, because that's when you're going to lose them. Immediately when you scrack them, call them back. Immediately start call, so they come sit on the grass again. Then you're done. Tomorrow you do the same thing, and eventually they just fly. But it's a long process for me personally to get birds into the sky.
Oh, got it.
So I don't like losing them, especially if you only bred 1 or 2 and now you lose that bird. The other breeding was wasted.
Oh, shit. Is it true that sometimes seldom rollers can be one of your best producers at times?
Yes, for sure. So so you mean a bird that rolls less frequently?
Exactly.
Yes. So that bird, if its roll is perfect, you know what I mean, but it's less seldom, you must just choose the correct hen that's a bit more frequent, or more frequent than he is, and hopefully you must try to balance it. Or like I said earlier, 2 wrongs don't make a right. So that bird that's less seldom, but you've got a hen that's perfect all the time, 3 times, 4 times a minute, breed them together. And you can get aspects from both ways, perfect roll on this side, the activity and all those type of things.
Got it. Then another